Anyway, without ado, let's open in prayer, shall we? Abba, Father, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, we just want to bless you and thank you for this Sabbath day. We want to glorify you in it. We thank you, Yahweh, that you blessed Joshua and Medina for their service here today. We just thank you because it was such a blessing. It's such refreshing to see and hear what you're doing through them, Yahweh. And we just ask that you put your shalom peace upon them wherever they go in their comings and goings, and bless them. And I pray you do the same for the rest of the people here in this fellowship and your people around the world, and especially Yahweh. Look after Yehuda in the land, who is now suffering more and more persecution, as we've seen earlier this week. And that, Yahweh, that you will remove the blindness from their eyes, that they'll begin to come to see that their only way out of this whole mess is through Yeshua, who they have rejected up to this point. So, Abba, right now I pray that whatever I say today in this message, if it's not of you, that it may drop to the floor and become nothing but the dust of the ground, and it will be not received into the hearts of your people. And I just pray that, Yahweh, whatever I say today will speak individually to each people here and collectively to their unique situation, whatever they're going through, Yahweh. And I pray that your spirit of faith will come upon your people, Yahweh, to defeat the enemy in their circumstances in their life, Yahweh, to empower them to be victorious over the enemy. And with that, Yahweh, commend this message into your hands in the name of Yeshua and by the power of your Spirit. Amen. Amen. All right, so last time we finally concluded Colossians chapter 1. After about 5 weeks, I think, or 6 weeks, we went through chapter 1. And so now we concluded chapter 2 last week, so now we're going to start in chapter 3, but we're only going to get up to probably about verse 6. I didn't have enough time to really get through the whole thing, and I don't think with where Yahweh was taking me, we would be able to get through all of chapter 3 anyway. So to not belabor it too long, I'll maybe conclude that part next week. So anyway, in Colossians chapter 3, what we had gone through in the past was, I had brought out, I think it was last week, where Shaul was basically showing the Colossians that they had the capacity to revive the riches, that are the mystery that is contained within Yeshua. And part of that mystery is the fact that up until the time that Shaul was talking to the Colossians, that even the unclean spirits did not understand really what this mystery was that Yahweh was doing through Yeshua in us. And so what he went on to say is that now that it's been revealed to us what this mystery is, that it's incumbent upon us to take this mystery that we have knowledge of now and begin to launch our assault against the kingdom of darkness and let the enemy know that no longer are you oppressing me, but I am now going into the kingdom of darkness where you reside, and I'm going to turn your world upside down, because that's the mystery that's been now revealed and you're on notice. And this is what I've been trying to get across here for the last several months, is that we need to step up our game. We need to come to a realization of what our identity is in Yeshua HaMashiach and what our potential is in Yeshua, if we will just understand what that potential is and begin to pray fervently that Yahweh will work these kind of miracles in our life, that we call those things out that be not as though they are. Okay? And so this is what we got to do. So with that, let's go ahead and continue on in Colossians, because the whole problem here with Colossians, just like it was with the Galatians series I went through, is you had all these peripheral groups. You had the house of Shammai, the house of Hillel. You had the 7 different types of Pharisees that were influencing these groups, and you had the Sadducees, and you had the Herodians, the Samaritans, the Ebionites, and all these groups that I went through in these other studies, who were all launching their assaults of their different ideologies on the Colossians and carrying them away captive. And so Shaul continues to pound into them that it doesn't have to be this way. You need to be on guard. You need to get this greater all wisdom and spiritual understanding that empowers you to be able to fight the forces of darkness, so that you don't find yourself caught short and have yourself severed because you wind up taking on the covenant of Hagar. So this is what we're continuing in. So in verse 1 it says, "If then you were raised, revivified spiritually with Messiah, seek and acquire those things which are above, where Messiah is sitting at the right hand of Yahweh. So, what is this that he's talking about? Well, let's look in James chapter 3, verse 17 and 18. It says, "But the wisdom that is from above, and is basically the beginning of all wisdom." See, this worldly wisdom that we see here today in this world is not the original wisdom. What he's saying here is the original wisdom is the one that comes from above. That's the one that started first. The one that you see here today is the perverted wisdom that comes from the garden. The tree of knowledge of good and evil mixed together, which is actually deception. And that's the tougher one to weed through, because when somebody lies to you, and it's a bold-faced, outright lie, you most of the time can probably pick it up, at least if you know what the background of the situation is. But when somebody mixes truth and error together, that's tough, because that now compels you to go through and begin to dissect and find out where is the truth and where is the error, assuming that you're even aware you're being deceived. So that gets tricky. Anyway, is first pure in its perfection, then peaceable, able to pacify. So what Shaul is saying is, this wisdom that we get from Yeshua that resides in the seed of Abraham that's down inside our loins, if we'll just tap into that seed and germinate it and allow it to flourish in our life, has the kind of peace that allows you to be able to pacify people. If you can really look at yourself and see that you have the ability, the gift of being able to pacify people, particularly in difficult situations, then you possess this type of wisdom that he's talking about here. Gentle, willing to yield into compliance. And this is what we have a problem with today. I was talking with Jane through email last night a little bit about how there's so many different belief systems out there within the Nazarene faith right now. The Messianic movement, the Hebraic roots movement, where there's so many different schools of thought on so many different things, and yet they're finding it hard to bring themselves into compliance to the real truth. And they're using all these exterior, peripheral types of text and other writings of other people, Jewish sources and others of sorts, who are using those sources instead of the Torah to be able to speak on true sound doctrine. And we know, we're told that in the end times they're not going to be able to endure sound doctrine. And they'll heap up these teachers. So we're actually living in the midst of this, which is the whole crux of the book of Colossians that I'm going through. Because what Shaul went through in his day is what we are actually seeing today. It's packaged a little bit different. It might be delivered a little bit different, but it's the same kind of demonic spirits that are using the spirit of religion and false doctrine to creep in and take people captive. And this is what we're dealing with, and this is what Shaul is so frustrated with in his writings. Full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown as in scattering seed. So if you want to build righteousness of Yeshua, you got to treat it like seed. And as a farmer does, he goes out and he throws seed out. You don't want to throw it indiscriminately. You want to plant it in good ground, but you need to sow the seed of righteousness if you want to reap a harvest of more righteousness. In peace by those who make peace. So here what he's saying is that be a peacemaker. If you're a peacemaker, which is what he's talking about in verse 17, as part of the attribute, if you're a peacemaker and you're sowing peace, you're going to get more peace in return. And that goes to your account in righteousness. So, continuing back in Colossians, in verse 2, it says, set in mental obedience your mind on the things above and not on the things of the earth. And so this is a big problem today, because we live in a very materialistic society, just like, what's her name? This is girl back from the 80s, is a popular singer, Material Girl. She sings a song, Madonna. I'm a material girl. I live in a material world. And so we have this materialism that's constantly pulling on our flesh. It's working on our emotions. It's working on our desires, our passions. It's working on our minds. It's working through our ears, through our sight, through our hands, through our tongue, as Jane was talking about earlier about food, how food is a great source of passion and desire for us. And to give up some of this stuff is not very easy for a lot of us. It has a strong pull on the flesh. But if we're going to focus on those things, then we begin to push out the Ruach HaKodesh. and we begin to get to quench it, and the spirit of flesh begins to come over us more and more and more. And that's what we got to guard ourselves against every single day. So, if you're in this position, this is a clue to walking in the flesh. As long as one is focused on the things of this world, the passions of it compel them to behave this way. I've stated before that your behavior cannot operate independently of your identity. Your behavior cannot, in no way, shape, or form, operate independently of your identity. If you want to know who you really are, look at your behavior. Your behavior is like little clues that are leaving a track that will lead you to who you really are. And oftentimes we think we're this, but we're really that. And if we're really honest with ourselves and we look at our behavior and we study our behavior, we'll begin to find out how wretched we really are and why we set ourselves up for catastrophe all the time. But a lot of us don't want to do that. But we need to do that. This is what we're being compelled to do. In verse 3, for you died and your life is hidden by keeping it secret with Messiah in Yahweh, our Father. The next time you find yourself striving over something that irritates you, ask if what you are feeling is from above or below. Unfortunately, we don't really do this, a lot of us. I include myself. We're reactionary. We're on autopilot. You know, something hits us, we just go right into carnal mode. And we're already in the flesh before we even realize we're in the flesh. And it's all history after that. We've already damaged ourselves. We've already defiled ourselves. The Holy Spirit is being pushed out of the arena of our temple, which is what our body is. And therefore, another spirit is coming to take over. And then everything starts to fall apart and it gets even worse. I mean, Jane was talking earlier about she wants more self-control. And I taught about this, I think maybe a month or so ago. Self-control is the point where most everybody stalls. And it's at the self-control point that if you would get control over that point, the next phase in that formula is perseverance. But you can't have perseverance if you first don't have the self-control. We need to have that self-control. Because that, if we endure that in patience, we then get the perseverance. Otherwise, we wind up self-sabotaging ourselves. Verse 4, when Messiah, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. So in other words, this is the goal. This is what we're shooting for. But if you want to get to this point, you got to be able to start doing the other stuff we just discussed. So in continuing Colossians chapter 3, it says in verse 5, therefore put to death and mortify your members, which are limbs of your body. And I think what he's talking about here is some of us, our hand causes us to sin. It's a limb of the body. Okay? Some of us have an unruly tongue. I do from time to time. That gets me into trouble. Some of us hear things, so our ears are part of the body, a limb of the body that causes problem. For some of us, it's the eyes. It's the lust of whatever it is you're lusting for. For some of us, it's other parts of our body that cause us to stumble. And so we need to bring each part of our body. Again, it comes back to meditating on where am I having my problems? What is my behavior? If my behavior is such that my eyes are causing me problems, I need to bring my eyes under control, in subjection of the Messiah. And I need to deny to my eyes what it wants so passionately to have. But we don't do that in the body of Messiah. I'm just watching so many people are just on autopilot and they just run with it and they don't even question it because they think it's normal. And it really is normal for them. It really is. But we're supposed to overcome that. Let's move on. Which are on the earth, fornication, which includes adultery and incest, uncleanliness, impurity from demonic sources. So this uncleanliness is not like, for example, a woman's, the law of Niddah or something like that, where a woman's impurity cycle. It's talking about, in the Greek, the impurity from demonic sources. That's the kind of uncleanliness that this is talking about. So we need to examine, do we have any kind of uncleanness going on in our lives that are inviting the kingdom of darkness into our life and is giving him legal jurisdiction in our life. If you're going to fight spiritual warfare, which is what we've been talking about in the last several months, these are legal matters. It's like going into a courtroom. You have to abide by legal matters and protocol in a court if you expect to win your case in the court. And so we need to understand what these legalities are. Passion from lust, evil desire, a longing for what is forbidden from the inner worthlessness. I want you to take note of that part. I found that to be very interesting. I'll expound on that in a second. And covetousness as fraudulence and extortion, which is idolatry, which is image worship. The inner worthlessness is a form of depression which appeals to the flesh, comes from the flesh. It can be called an inner critic. Let's take a look at this for a moment. I think it's interesting. Some of these mantras of the inner critic that we all have within ourselves, and we loop these messages within our minds, is I am bad, wrong, inadequate, worthless, guilty, shameful, and deficient in areas of my life. Now, here's the problem. If you're doing this in a carnal kind of way, you get one set of results, which is depression, which then has its own sets of behaviors that manifests itself amongst other people in your life. But if you're dealing with it from a spiritual perspective, with Yeshua in your life, this actually can be used to your benefit. So it's a double-edged sword. So it's important to try to understand which philosophy are you coming from. Let's take a look a little bit more. There are 7 different types of inner critics that we all have in basic form. The perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist. I do not want a boat windshield that I manufacture in my business to go out of there unless it's absolutely perfect. As perfect as can possibly be. I remember I had a friend years ago who wanted to go into business, and I gave him a part of my building to get started. I didn't charge him rent. He was a brother in Messiah. He's not in the faith anymore. He fell out. But I gave him a side of his business, and he would spend a whole week building basically kitchen cabinets. So that was what he was doing. And I would go and I'd watch his work. And he would go and he would make sure that every single little edge was absolutely perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, he would put lacquer thinner under the Formica. He was doing Formica at the time to delaminate and clean all the wood off, respray it, put another one. He had this special machine. He'd go around and clean it all up. And maybe 10 days would go by and he finally finishes the job. And then, which it looked beautiful. It was fantastic. But I said to him, I said, if you're going to be in business, this isn't going to work. Oh, well, why not? It's perfect. I agree. You did a beautiful job. It's perfect. The customer's going to flip backwards. The problem is that you charged $1,800 for the job, but if you divide that $1,800 up over the last 10 days that you've been working on it, the amount of hours you've been working on it, you're basically working for about $15 an hour. You can't be in business and work at $15 an hour. Now, you're fortunate because you don't have overhead. I'm not charging you rent. But if you had to go rent your own warehouse, you would have to charge more money for your job. And the customer's not going to pay it because it's not market value. Because he could go down the street and find it from any of these other guys for $1,000 less than what you're charging. But the amount of time that you're spending on this perfectionism is preventing you from being able to make the kind of money you need to make. So he says, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, what you did over here is fantastic, but the customer will never know this edge. The layperson on the street would never have any idea. And if you went to your competition, you'll find that their quality is going to be far, far less than yours, but they're going to knock it out faster and they're making a profit. And he struggled, though, that for years because he was a perfectionist. And perfectionism is good, particularly in the body of Messiah. I'm not knocking it, but it can cause you problems in your life if you don't have it in balance. The other inner critic is taskmaster, somebody who barks out orders. You know, I won't mention no names, I'll get in trouble. But there are some that bark out orders to others, you know. But anyway, the inner controller, where they want to control the inside of themselves so much to the point that it can paralyze you from moving forward and actually achieving anything in your life. Because you put so many controls and limitations in your life to the point that you can't actually execute anything in your life and you become disabled. The guilt tripper. In my Jewish background, we jokingly call it putting the Jewish guilt trip on somebody. I do it all the time. I do it in jest. I don't really mean it, but I do it just, to make people laugh. But it's really, in a way, is no laughing matter if it's really being used, as Judaism does that a lot. They put a Jewish guilt on somebody, and that's not good. So that's the guilt tripper. The destroyer, I won't mess with that. The underminer, people who like to come in and undermine everything that you do. And as if like they want to take credit for what you're doing, or they don't want you to succeed. If you're that kind of a person, that's a dangerous behavior. And the molder or the manipulator. I'm sure we've all seen people in our lives who like to manipulate because they see something that you have or that they can benefit from, and they want it and they don't want to pay for it or earn it in some kind of way, and so they want to squeeze it out of you and give you the shakedown. So those are 7 basic types of inner critics that we all have. There are others, but I don't want to get too crazy with it. So there are 2 ways it is dealt with, as I said earlier, from the carnal perspective or the spiritual perspective. So let's take a look at the carnal one at first. You can treat it as a misguided ally. So you actually view it as an ally, these traits, to be befriended and transformed. This is the approach recommended by popular psychologists. The problem is it oftentimes doesn't have lasting, permanent effects. That's the problem. Particularly if you're dealing with a spirit, an unclean spirit that has a legal jurisdiction in your life that you're not aware of, which is actually a stronghold. I'm not talking possession necessarily. I'm just talking about a stronghold where you have this cycle of defeat over and over again. You keep trying to lick this problem. It just rears its ugly head back over and over again. That's a sign that there's a stronghold in your life, and it has a legal right to be there. But that's another story for another time. These approaches see the inner critic as attempting to help or protect the person, yourself, through, though it is distorted, dysfunctional way. This makes it possible to connect with a critic and transform it over time into a helpful ally. This is reliance on self-righteousness. So when you go to secular self-help groups, they may be able to help you to a certain degree. But if you're going to deal with the hardcore issues in your life, like generational curses and all kinds of other stuff that you're not even aware that you actually possess, but it's causing you problems in your life and you just haven't made the connection, you're going to need a source higher than psychology to help you with that. So you're going to have to deal with this from another perspective, and that's where we'll go now. Dealing with it righteously. 2, you could treat it as an enemy to be ignored, dismissed, fought against, or overcome. And that's how we have to treat these kinds of dysfunctionalisms that we have going on inside of our life. We have to treat it as an enemy, because it is an enemy, because it's of the flesh. And we need to get out of the flesh if we're going to walk in the Spirit. I did a whole 9-part series on walking in the flesh, taking them one at a time, and I go through that in great effort there. You can view it there if you haven't seen it. And so in Romans chapter 6, verses 5 through 14, let's look at this. It says, starting in verse 5, "For if we have been united in growth together," and this is what we're doing here, we're growing together. We suffer when one person is going through suffering, and we're praising Yahweh as we did today in the victories that some of us get here from week to week. "Of His death, certainly we also shall be in the likeness of His resurrection. Knowing this," in verse 6, "that our old worn-out man was crucified," in other words, rendered as entirely idle. See, the old man that we buried in baptism into that death, when we came up out of that water, we are saying to Yeshua that I want to render him as entirely idle. In a state of suspended animation, if you will, where he's non-functional. He is not the dominant modality in my life. Yeshua is. That is a moment-by-moment conscious decision that we all must make in our walk with Him. That the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin. Verse 7, "For he who has died has been freed to regard as just or innocent from sin." This is the state that we need to be in. "Now if we died with Messiah, we believe that we shall also live with Him." That's the hope part that he's throwing in. Verse 9, "Knowing that Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more, death no longer has dominion to exercise mastery over him." And that's what we got to get to. Isn't that what Yahweh said to Cain when he asked of him of where's your brother? He said what? Sin lies at the door. And in the Hebrew it means, but you should be a master over it. You should be dominating it instead of it dominating you. Yet the prevailing concept today is that sin dominates the average believer in Messiah. And they don't have a clue that they're under this kind of domination because it seems so normal to them. They just somehow think that when they accepted Yeshua, game over. I've got salvation. That's the end of the story. But not the case. Verse 10, for the death that he died to sin once and for all. But the life that he lives to Yahweh. Verse 11, likewise you also reckon by taking inventory of yourselves to be dead indeed to sin. So that means every day we have to take an inventory. Am I really, really, really bringing this under control? Am I really fighting the good fight? Am I really trying to stamp out sin in my life? Am I even trying to understand where sin even resides in my life? You know, every year just before Passover, we go through our houses and we look for leaven, chametz. You know, we look all over. We pull up the pillows, we pull out the furniture, look under the rug, and you know, if you really look, you'll see in the cracks of the table here some crumbs fall in the crack. You know, the whole metaphor of this principle is that you're looking through your house to see where are you finding these crumbs at. You're never going to get them all out. That's not really the point. But the point is, metaphorically, is that in the same way that you're diligently looking through your house to all these strange areas that you normally wouldn't look to find crumbs, it also should be, there should be points or parts of inside of your body, as talked about before, like maybe your hand's causing you a problem, maybe your ears are causing you a problem, maybe your eyes are causing you a problem, maybe your mouth is causing you a problem, maybe your stomach is causing. There's comets, there's leaven somewhere hiding in your body. Know that. You're not going to get rid of it all. But are we willing to go inside of ourselves and look diligently to see if we can find it hidden in there somewhere? Are we asking Yahweh? I know, and I think we do this on Shavuot every year. I think it's in Leviticus 26. There's a prayer that basically says, when we recite it, that there's so much Babylon down inside of us that in essence, if Yahweh was to just come right here, right now, say, Pedro, I'm going to show you just how much Babylon you got inside of you that you're not aware of, you would probably drop dead. And that's the gist of the prayer, is that you have so much in you that if we revealed it all right now, it would kill you. It would scare you to death. So he doesn't do that. What he does is little by little, he shows us over the weeks, years, months that we're growing in this faith. But do we go to Yahweh and say, show me a little more? Show me a little more. With mercy, with compassion, but show me a little more, and then show me how to get it out of here. Show me how to get it under control, because I want more of this power. I want more of the riches of Yeshua. I want more of this mystery that's hidden in Yeshua, in the heavenly places, to come upon me. I want more of His nature. And that takes guts to do that, to really look at yourself, just like this young man. He was willing. He's not even believing Yeshua yet. And yet, he shows so much more fruit of introspection within himself that he's been guilty of all this evil, and now he wants to reconcile and make good on all this stuff that he's done bad to other people. And yet, you don't see that much in the body of Messiah, sad to say. Okay. To be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Yahweh and Messiah Yeshua, our Master. Therefore, do not let sin reign as a king. Do not let it reign as a king. That's what it means in the Greek, to reign. In your mortal body, that you should obey and conform as a commanded authority it in its lust of forbidden desires. And so when we operate this way, we're basically saying, I am conforming to a commanded authority that resides in me when I live in sin and I don't bring it into check. I've resigned myself to basically concede the fact I have this authority inside me that commands that I do this stuff, and I can't break it. That is the carnal mind, and that's what we need to fight against. So let's move on. Verse 13, and do not present your members as various parts of your body as instruments which is a weapon of war. I didn't even realize that it meant that in the Greek. The word instrument means a weapon in war. We are in a war, as I've been saying lately. And too many of us don't even realize that when we got baptized in Yeshua's death, that we are proclaiming a war against the enemy. And that we are commanded to fight. That means, why are we told that we're to put on the full armor of Yahweh? Why would you put on armor if you're not in a war? Okay, right? Why would you put on armor if you're not in a war? But so many people are running around like, oh, I don't know anything about spiritual war and all this other kind of stuff. But this is what Paul's talking about here, because the Colossians are being subjected to warfare. And they don't have their armor on because they have a very superficial knowledge of who Yeshua really is and what this riches of that's in Yeshua that resides within them, but they haven't come to the realization of it yet. And that's why they're being carried away by these various peripheral groups. Now, if you're not going to put on the armor of Yahweh or Yeshua and fight the war that He's telling you to fight, then you're putting on the armor of Ha-Satan and you're fighting against the kingdom of righteousness. And this goes back to what I was talking about in Galatians about taking the covenant of Hagar. You can't have both covenants at the same time. You got one or the other. And so we have to make a decision. And I think this is where I see the world is going. The world is going in a way now that we're really getting into some serious battles. I mean, we really got to be on guard. I'm seeing so much dysfunctionalism, it's making my head spin of what I see people are going through. And I see them just like the Colossians. They have such a superficial knowledge of who Yeshua is and what His righteousness really is that people are coming in and they're feeding them all kinds of doctrines, and they're making these doctrines to come in and intertwining it with the true righteousness of Yeshua, which then melts Yeshua's righteousness into something else. And they think by adding this stuff, it now completes you in Yeshua. No, that's not what Shaul was talking about in the beginning of these texts. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under or beneath the law, but under grace. Now, this being beneath the law is basically this concept from Romans chapter 8, verse 2. For the law of the Spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua has made me free from the law of sin and death. See, we're not under the law of sin and death because we've been redeemed by the blood of Yeshua. So we have the law of the Spirit of life. That's the law that we're under. We're not, because the Torah, the letter of the law, states that the transgression of sin, basically you die. That's the penalty of transgressing the law, is death. But we're not under that because we have Yeshua if we're actively walking in that. If not, we're regressing back, and He says He takes no pleasure in those who draw back. So let's go back to Colossians chapter 3, going here into verse 6. It says, But because of these things, the wrath with violent passions of Yahweh is coming upon the sons of disobedience that comes from unbelief. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, it says, Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah, and our gathering together to Him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, as frightened to the point of crying. This is what he's trying to tell them. Apparently some of them were so traumatized because there were groups who were coming in and literally telling them, hey bro, you missed the boat. Yeshua already came and left already, and you took the people with him. And they bought this. They bought it. How many of us would buy that if somebody came to you right now and told you Yeshua has already returned and taken His bride away, married her, and they're up in heaven right now? How many of us would buy that? But there's some people out there that are very, very compelling. They have spirits that they can give you some good arguments to prove their points. They're good. I take my hat off to them. I've read them. They're good. They're really good. But if you don't know how to rightly divide the word of truth, you're in trouble. But even Yeshua says, when they tell you I'm out in the desert, don't even go out and look. Don't entertain it. It's not true. It's just not true. So the point here is that some of them were frightened to the point of even crying that they missed the boat. And he's trying to help them to understand, no, that's not the case. Either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us. So apparently some were trying to write letters impersonating Paul. And making it look like Paul's writing, hey, you guys all missed the boat. Paul, see what Paul's saying? They're impersonating him. They're using all kinds of crafty stuff to lure the Colossians away, as though the day of Messiah had already come. Verse 3, let no one deceive or seduce you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away, apostasy of the truth, comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who destroys physically, spiritually, and eternally. Verse 4, who opposes and is repugnant to and exalts above measure of himself, above all that is called Yahweh, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as Yahweh in the temple in Jerusalem or elsewhere. I thought this was interesting. It includes the word elsewhere. Now, we all know that the temple is only in Jerusalem. But is it? Is it? Stop and think for a moment. The temple is not just in Jerusalem. You're the temple. You're the temple. You're the temple. You're the temple. You. We are all the temple. And Yahweh resides inside of us. But if we allow these groups to come in and subvert that and implant the covenant of Hagar inside of us, then the enemy is residing within inside of us because of that covenant. The covenant of Hagar. And as I went through in the book of Galatians, the covenant of Yeshua is immediately cut off because you circumcise yourself in a way that is not prescribed according to Torah, spiritually speaking. You can't have two covenants going on. Yeshua even says you can't serve two masters. You either love one and you hate the other. Of Yahweh, showing himself that he is Yahweh. Now, am I saying there's not going to be a temple or an edifice or something on the Temple Mount where this man goes and does that anyway? No, I'm not saying that. That very well may happen. There's a lot of speculation. But my point is, we are the temple. Yahweh is not living in a man-made temple right now. He's living in our temple. And if we allow these sources to come in and infiltrate this temple and desecrate the altar within our temple, the Ruach is gone. See ya. Don't want to be ya. I can't reside in here with any unclean thing that you have allowed in your life. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16 and 17, what is the temple? Do you not know that you are the temple of Yahweh, and that the Spirit of Yahweh dwells or cohabits in you? Verse 17, if anyone defiles the temple of Yahweh, Yahweh will destroy him. For the temple of Yahweh is holy, which temple you are. Do we need anything else? Again, I'm not saying this annuls the fact that there may be some sort of a temple that is erected by the Jews or the Levites, and because we do know that the animal sacrifices will commence. The evening and morning ovations will commence again. So we know that's going to happen. But is this a dual kind of thing? Could be. I don't know. Just something to think about. Okay, verse 5. Do you not remember that when I was still with you I told you these things? Going back to Thessalonians. And now you know what is restraining or holding down, that he may be revealed or disclosed in his own time, which is an appointed season. So the man of sin, the 12th imam, whoever it's going to wind up being, it has an appointed time in which he will be manifested. And I've said before, it's not about prophecy right now, that's not my point, but I really believe that somewhere between Feast of Tabernacles and Passover is the time of the year when this man will be revealed. That doesn't mean that he'll cut the contract at that time, but he will be made manifest to the world at that particular time. That's what I think. Whether it's so or not, we'll see. Okay, verse 7. For the mystery of the secret religious rites of lawlessness, in violation of the law of righteousness, is already at work with effectiveness. And I don't know about you, but what I see going on with believers out there, Hasatan is working very effectively in the body of Messiah. Very effectively. I mean, he's laser sharp in what he's doing to people. And they don't have any clue what's actually happening to them. Only he that now restrains, who holds down, will do so until he is taken, removes himself out of the way. And basically, I think I've said this before, that I believe that which restrains the man of sin from showing up on the scene, morality, Torah. As long as societies in the world have a basic form of morality in their societies and in their governments, there's a certain level of stability in the world. But when the governments begin, or I should say really when the people begin to become corrupt and they start throwing away morality in society, Yahweh then starts to put leaders who become oppressive over those peoples because of the immorality. And he starts to bring judgment on them. And when the earth gets to a point where all the nations in their morality has dropped below a certain point, then that morality or the Torah that's moved out of those societies allows the man of sin or lawlessness to come on the scene and manifest himself. Why? Because in the same way that Yeshua is looking for a bride that's developing the fruits that he wants, and he wants to harvest his wife and bring her with him to present before the Father, well, the man of sin is looking for the goats of the world, the rebellious ones, the sons of disobedience. So they're being groomed. So as morality drops, it at some point moves out of the way, then the man of sin can manifest himself in the world because now he's ready to harvest his people. And there's where you have the mark of the beast and the number of his name and all that. That's another thing. Let's move on. Only he who now restrains, who holds down, will do so until he is taken or removes himself. The Torah removes itself out of the way. And verse 8, and when the lawless one, not subject to Jewish Torah law, I make the distinction here because there's Talmudic law, which is the covenant of Hagar. Okay, we don't want that one. This is being specific. It's talking about Jewish Torah law now. Okay, will be revealed or disclosed, whom the master will consume, take away violently with the breath of his mouth, and destroy with the brightness of his coming. Verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Hasatan with all power which is miraculous, signs of, which is basically, the word signs means ceremonies. So apparently there's going to be some kind of ceremonies that they'll perform as well. Just like the Levites will be sacrificing ritualistically, there'll be ceremonies with that. So Hasatan likes to mimic everything that Yahweh is doing. What's interesting is I've said to a few people recently, if you go on YouTube and you look at the 2012 Olympics, if you look up the opening and closing ceremonies, what you'll see is a whole choreographed show that has absolutely nothing to do with the Olympics. It has absolutely nothing to do with athletics or athletes or anything. It's a whole choreographed show of how the Illuminati or the enlightened ones are choreographing what they're about to do to the world. And you can see it in the opening, and just type that in, you'll see it. You'll see all kinds of images of all kinds of stuff that they're parading out on the stages with music, and they even bring out the mock-up of the Ark of the Covenant, and they show like smokestacks with people hunched over wearing these old ratty clothes like they're workers in factories, like slaves and stuff. You look, any normal person, if you look at this video, you're like, what is this? This has nothing to do with athleticism. Nothing about the Olympics whatsoever. No, because what they're doing is they're subliminally and legally, they're telling you, this is what we're going to do to you. This is what's coming. So this is a parading ceremony that they're unleashing out on the world to show them legally, this is what we're getting ready to do to you. If you don't understand it, it's not our problem. But they have their own moral code within this society. And they feel compelled that they have to let the world know what they're doing, but it's in their own kind of language and symbolism. So, anyway, with lying wonders which are omens. Verse 10, and with all unrighteous legal injustice. So unrighteousness means legal injustice. Legal injustice. Deception and delusion among those who perish, because they did not receive except the love and affection for the truth, which is the Torah, that they might be saved or preserved. See, we will be preserved if we hang in there, and we don't lose our focus, and we stay connected to Yeshua, stay close to the trunk of the tree. We will be preserved during these rough times. But the ones that don't have the love of the Torah are not going to be preserved, and they're going to receive the full wrath. Verse 11, and for this reason Yahweh will send or dispatch to them a strong effective delusion, which is a fraudulent error, that they should believe and trust their spiritual being to the lie. That's how far down the rabbit hole these people went. They have believed this delusion so much that they put their whole soul and spirit and being into these entities who are lying to them about what the truth is. That they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth of the Torah, but had pleasure, approved and promoted in unrighteousness. So they're approving and promoting this unrighteousness, which is, as I stated over here, legal injustice. So they're promoting legal injustice. That's what they're actively doing. We're seeing this in our country right now. I mean, I can't speak too much to other countries, but in this country right now, we're seeing all kinds of legal injustices being perpetuated on our society. What used to be abnormal yesterday is now considered normal today. The whole dialogue and argument is being switched around on us. And if we don't hold fast to our argument, they win the dialogue debate. And they change the meaning of what's right and what's wrong. I mean, they're going to do it anyway, but, you know, and they'll pull that on the world. But for us as individuals as well as collectively, we cannot allow that to subvert our faith in that process. We've got to hold on. Well, I'm going to end it right there because I'll go through the last 3 quarters of chapter 3 next week, hopefully. So let's go ahead and close in prayer, shall we? Abba, Father, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, thank you for opening up your words to us here today. I pray, Abba, that I have done justice to what Shaul is trying to get across, what was on his heart to the Colossians, and how relevant and pertinent it is for us today, Yahweh, that if we can just glean those kinds of frustrations and legal arguments that Paul is making to the Colossians and see how it is manifesting in our lives and in the body of Messiah today, we can be stronger for it and not be carried away as the Colossians were carried away. Help us, Abba. Empower your people. Glorify yourself in your people. Magnify Yeshua's name and your name in your people, Yahweh, and enlighten them. Remove the blindness from their eyes, that they may be able to understand that they are cutting these different covenants with these different entities, Yahweh, and giving them a legal right to hold them in bondage in their life and they can't break out. Remove that hindrances from them, Yahweh, that they can see that. So Yahweh, in the name of Yeshua, I just pray that the rest of the Sabbath will be a blessing to all your people and that you will be able to look down and say you are pleased with your bride at the progress that she is making in putting these white garments on herself and cleaning herself up and coming to a truer understanding of what the righteousness of Yeshua is, Yahweh. So we just want to bless you and thank you in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen.